The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was always noisy. Hundreds of different species talked, argued, and made deals in dozens of languages. But today something felt wrong. The noise seemed hollow, like an echo in an empty cave. Dr. Park Mina walked through the curved corridors that led to the main chamber. Her footsteps clicked on the smooth metal floor. She had worked here for 15 years, studying alien plants and helping different species share knowledge. Today felt different. Today felt empty. She stopped at the viewing window that looked down into the council chamber. Row after row of seats curved around the central speaking platform. Each seat was designed for a different type of alien body. Some were tall and thin for the stick-like Vertani. Others were wide and flat for the rolling Globex people. And there, in the fifth row, was the human section. It was completely empty. Ambassador Kang Hyun's chair sat covered in dust. The small Earth flag that always flew behind the human seats hung limp and forgotten. The translation devices that humans used were dark and silent. It looked like no one had sat there for months. But that was impossible. Humans never missed council meetings. They were always the first to arrive and the last to leave. They asked questions about everything and offered help to everyone. Where were they? Chairman Vexus Tari stood at the central platform. His crystal body caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. His voice boomed through the speakers, but Mina could hear the worry in his words. "We have received troubling reports," the chairman said. "Human colonies across the galaxy are going dark. Trade ships report that human vessels are leaving their routes. Research stations are being abandoned. We have tried to contact Earth, but we only receive automatic messages." A Globex representative rolled forward. His round body shimmered blue with stress patterns. "My trading posts report the same thing. Human merchants simply packed up and left. No explanation. No goodbye. They just vanished." "The mining station in the Kepler system is empty," added a tall Vertani. "The humans were there last week. This week, nothing. All their equipment is gone." Mina pressed her face against the viewing window. Her breath fogged the glass. This couldn't be happening. Humans didn't just disappear. They were the most social species in the galaxy. They loved to talk and help and fix things. They were always there when other species needed them. She thought about her friend Lee Do-hyun, a merchant captain who traded between Earth and the outer colonies. Just last month he had helped her ship rare plant samples from a dangerous world. He had risked his life to help her research. Would he really leave without saying goodbye? The discussion in the chamber grew louder. Species after species reported the same thing. Humans were gone. Not dead, not captured, just gone. Their ships were missing from spaceports. Their homes on alien worlds were empty. Their communication networks had gone silent. "Perhaps they are having some kind of internal problem," suggested a Trilac representative. "Species sometimes need time to solve their own issues." But Chairman Vextari shook his crystal head. "The automated messages from Earth are very clear. They say all human assets are being moved to secure locations. They ask everyone to wait for further instructions, but no instructions come." Mina left the viewing window and walked to her small office in the research wing. Her computer showed dozens of messages from worried colleagues across the galaxy, all asking the same question: where did the humans go? She tried calling her research partner on Mars. The call connected, but only a computer voice answered. "All human personnel have been relocated. Please wait for further communication." She tried calling her friend Commander Bok Ji-won, who worked for Human Defense Corps. Same message. She tried calling her old teacher Dr. Kim Jong-hyun on Luna Station. Same message. Every human she knew had vanished. Mina stared at her computer screen. 3 months ago, everything had been normal. Humans were everywhere in the galaxy, helping build things, fixing problems, trading goods, and making friends. They were the species that everyone called when something went wrong. Need a broken engine fixed? Call a human. Need help with a difficult translation? Call a human. Need someone to fly into a dangerous area and rescue trapped aliens? Definitely call a human. Now they were gone. She opened her research files and looked at her recent work. For the past year, she had been studying strange energy readings from the edge of the galaxy. The readings didn't make sense according to known science. When she had shown the data to human scientists, they had become very excited and worried. They had asked for all her information and started their own investigations. Alien scientists had been less interested. They said the readings were probably just equipment errors or natural space phenomena. Nothing to worry about. But humans had kept studying the strange energy. They had sent ships to investigate. They had asked the Council to fund more research. The Council had voted no. They said humans were being paranoid. They said humans saw problems everywhere. They said the galaxy was safe and there was no need to waste money on impossible energy readings. Mina remembered Ambassador Kang Hyun's face during that vote. He had looked sad and tired. He had spoken quietly to the Council about the importance of preparation. He had shown data and charts and asked for help. But the vote was final. No funding, no investigation, no action. That was 6 months ago. Now, looking at her empty computer screen, Mina began to understand. The humans hadn't disappeared randomly. They had been planning something. All those questions about the energy readings, all those requests for help that the Council had ignored, all those worried conversations about unknown threats. The humans had tried to warn everyone. When no one listened, they had made their own plans. But what kind of plans required every human in the galaxy to disappear? Outside her office window, alien ships moved through space like always. Trade continued. Life went on. But something important was missing. The galaxy felt smaller without humans, less safe, less hopeful. Somewhere in the distance, Mina could hear Chairman Vexitari still talking to the Council. His voice carried through the halls filled with growing panic. For the first time in galactic history, an entire species had vanished without warning. And Mina was beginning to suspect it wasn't the last surprise humanity had planned. 3 months had passed since the humans vanished, and the galaxy was starting to fall apart. Commander Bak Jiwon sat in a small cantina on Kepler Station, nursing a cup of bitter alien coffee. She was one of only 12 humans left in this entire sector of space. She had chosen to stay behind when her Defense Corps unit received evacuation orders. Someone needed to help the aliens understand what was coming. The cantina's owner, a friendly Trilak named Gorex, looked worried as he cleaned glasses with his forearms. "Business is terrible," he said. "The trade routes are too dangerous now. Pirates attack every convoy." Jiwon nodded sadly. She knew why. For 50 years, human Defense Corps ships had patrolled the space lanes, protecting merchant vessels from raiders. They had done it so well that most aliens forgot pirates existed. Now the humans were gone and the pirates were back. "I heard another merchant ship went missing yesterday," Gorex continued. "That's the 5th one this week. Without human escorts, no one wants to travel." Through the cantina's large window, Jiwon could see the spaceport. Ships came and went, but much slower than before. Alien crews worked frantically to load and unload cargo. Everything took longer now. What used to be simple was now complicated. She watched a Globex merchant arguing with a Vertani repair crew. The Globex's blue skin showed angry red stress patterns. The Vertani clicked their thin limbs in frustration. Neither species understood how to fix the human-built engine that powered the merchant's ship. This scene played out everywhere now. Humans had built or improved so many things across the galaxy. They had designed better engines, more efficient computers, stronger building materials. They had shared their knowledge freely with anyone who asked. But they had never written down all the details. They had planned to teach others slowly over time. Now there was no time, and no teachers. Jiwon's communication device buzzed. A message from Lee Do-hyun, one of the few human merchants still operating in this sector. "Pirates hit another convoy near Beta Station. 3 ships destroyed, 2 missing. The aliens are getting desperate. They're asking if we can provide escort service." She typed back. "How many ships do we have left?" "Maybe 20 in the whole sector." "Used to be 2,000. Jiwon stared at the numbers. 20 human ships to protect thousands of alien vessels across dozens of star systems. It was impossible. The humans who had stayed behind were just witnesses now, watching their alien friends struggle with problems that human presence had solved long ago. Meanwhile, Dr. Park Mina was discovering something terrible in the Council archives. She had spent weeks reading old meeting records, looking for clues about why humans had left. Most of the files were boring reports about trade agreements and territorial disputes. But buried deep in the classified sections, she found something that made her blood run cold. The files were marked Outer Rim Anomaly Investigation, Classification Level Red. For 30 years, Human scientists had been sending reports to the Council about strange energy readings from the galaxy's edge. The readings showed space itself was changing in ways that shouldn't be possible. Stars were disappearing, not exploding or dying, but simply ceasing to exist. Entire solar systems were vanishing from all sensors, as if they had never been there. Humans called it the silence. Mina read report after report. Human scientists begged the Council to take action. They showed data proving that the effect was growing, moving slowly toward the inner galaxy. They calculated that it would reach populated systems within 50 to 70 years. They asked for funding to study the phenomenon and develop countermeasures. Every single request was denied. The Council's responses were always the same. Insufficient evidence. Natural phenomenon. Human paranoia. Budget concerns. Ambassador. Kang Hyun had personally presented evidence to the Council 17 times over 3 decades. Each time, alien representatives had nodded politely and then voted to ignore the warnings. They said humans worried too much. They said the galaxy was stable and safe. The last report was dated just 6 months ago. Ambassador Kang Hyun had shown the Council new data proving that the silence was accelerating. It would reach the outer colonies within 20 years, not 50. He had begged the Council to declare a galactic emergency and begin immediate evacuation preparations. The vote was 847 against, 12 in favor. Only humans and 2 small allied species voted yes. Mina found the recording of that final meeting. She watched Ambassador Kang Hyun stand before the Council, his voice calm, but his eyes filled with sadness. "We have given you 30 years of evidence," he said. "We have shown you the data, explained the threat, and offered solutions. You have chosen to ignore everything. We cannot force you to act, but we will not sit and wait for extinction. Humanity will take steps to ensure our survival. We invite any species that wishes to join us." The Council had laughed. Actually laughed. Chairman Vextari had made a joke about human drama and doomsday predictions. The recording showed hundreds of alien representatives chuckling and shaking their heads. Ambassador Kang Hyun had simply nodded and left the chamber. 2 days later, every human in the galaxy received evacuation orders. Now Mina understood. Humans hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had tried to save it for 30 years. When no one would listen, they saved themselves. But where had they gone? And why hadn't they taken their alien friends with them? She found part of the answer in a personal message that Ambassador Kang Hyun had sent to her just before the evacuation began. She had been too busy with research to read it carefully at the time. "Dear Mina," the message said, "by the time you read this, we will be gone. We tried to convince the Council to act, but they refused to see the danger. We have spent 50 years preparing for what is coming. We have built ships and developed technology that can survive the silence. We have prepared places of safety beyond this galaxy. We wanted to take everyone with us. We planned for it. But we cannot force unwilling species to leave their homes. Those who stay behind will face what is coming with whatever resources they have. We are sorry we could not do more. If any survive what is coming, we will return to help rebuild. This is not goodbye forever. This is see you later. Take care of yourself and anyone else you can save. You will understand soon enough why we had to go." Mina closed the message file and stared at her reflection in the computer screen. Outside her office, she could hear alien voices discussing the latest shipping delays and equipment failures. Normal problems that seemed huge now but would soon seem very small, because somewhere in the outer rim, the silence was still growing. Still moving toward them. Still erasing everything in its path. And the only species that had known how to fight it was gone. 6 months after humanity's departure, the galaxy received its first real proof that the humans had been right all along, the outer rim. Communication array went silent on a Tuesday. Dr. Park. Mina was reviewing supply reports when the emergency alert came through the Council's communication system. Her computer screen flashed red, and Chairman Vexitari's panicked voice filled her office. "All Council members report to emergency session immediately. We have lost contact with the entire Zeta sector." Mina ran through the corridors toward the main chamber. Other aliens hurried alongside her. their faces showing the same confusion and fear she felt. The Zeta sector contained 47 star systems and over 3 billion people. You don't just lose contact with 3 billion people. The emergency session was chaos. Representatives shouted questions and demands in dozens of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the overlapping voices. Chairman Vexistari stood at the central platform, his crystal body dim with stress. At 800 Galactic Standard Time, all communication from the Zeta sector stopped, he announced. We sent probe ships to investigate. They report that the entire sector appears to be empty. Empty how? Demanded a Trelac representative. Gone, the chairman replied. No stars. No planets, no debris, no energy signatures. Just empty space where 47 solar systems used to be. The chamber fell silent. Mina felt her stomach drop. She knew what this was. The humans had warned about it for 30 years. The silence had finally reached populated space. In the days that followed, more sectors went dark. The phenomenon moved like a slow wave across the galaxy's outer edge. Everywhere it touched, matter simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not moved, just gone. As if those places had never been there at all. Admiral Nam Yunji was one of only 50 humans remaining in Council space. She had stayed behind to coordinate refugee evacuations from threatened worlds. When Mina contacted her, the Admiral agreed to meet at a small observation station near the expanding boundary of the silence. We tried to warn them, Admiral Nam said as they watched long-range sensor readings. For 30 years we showed them the data. We begged them to prepare. Mina stared at the displays. The readings made no sense according to normal physics. Where star systems should be, the sensors showed absolutely nothing. Not even empty space, just absence. What is it? Mina asked. We call it dimensional collapse, the Admiral explained. Something is rewriting the basic laws of reality in those areas. Matter can't exist there anymore because the rules that allow matter to exist have been changed. Changed by what? Admiral Nam shook her head. We never found out. We spent decades studying it. But we focused on how to survive it rather than what caused it. Does it matter what kills you if you can't stop it? They watched another star system disappear from the sensors. One moment it was there, the next it wasn't. Billions of lives, countless worlds, entire civilizations all erased in an instant. How do you survive something like that? Mina whispered. You leave, the Admiral said simply. You go somewhere it can't follow. That's what we did. We found ways to slip between dimensions, to hide in spaces that exist outside normal reality. We built ships that can survive where normal matter can't. We prepared safe places for our people. But you didn't take anyone else with you. Admiral Nam's face showed deep sadness. We tried. We spent 50 years developing technology to save everyone. We built ships big enough for entire alien populations. We prepared colonies in safe dimensions. We offered to take any species that wanted to come. The Council never told us about any offers, because they never believed the threat was real. They thought we were being paranoid. Every time we offered to help, they voted us down. They said evacuation plans would cause panic. They said moving billions of people was impossible. They said we should focus on positive solutions instead of preparing for disasters. Mina remembered all those council votes now. All those times humans had asked for emergency preparations and aliens had refused. They had thought humans were overreacting to an imaginary problem. We kept trying until the very end, Admiral Nam continued. Ambassador Kang Hyun made one final offer 3 days before the evacuation began. He told the Council we could take 50 million aliens with us in the first wave. More later as we prepared additional safe havens. What did the Council say? They voted to censure him for fear-mongering and destabilizing galactic society. That's when we realized there was no point in waiting anymore. If we stayed much longer, the silence would reach us too. They watched another sector disappear from the sensors. The wave of destruction was accelerating, moving faster than anyone had predicted. At this rate, it would reach the core worlds within 2 years instead of 20. Is there any way to stop it? Mina asked. Admiral Nam was quiet for a long moment. Maybe. We developed some theoretical countermeasures before we left, but they would require resources and cooperation from hundreds of species. The kind of galactic effort that would take decades to organize. The kind the Council would never approve. The kind the Council voted against 17 times. An emergency message came through their communication system. Engineer Yoon Taejin's voice crackled with static from a refugee evacuation ship. All stations, we have massive refugee fleets incoming from the Epsilon sector. Over 200 million aliens fleeing the expansion zone. We need immediate assistance with food, medical supplies, and temporary housing. Admiral Nam activated her response communicator. This is Admiral Nam, we're on our way. As they prepared to leave the observation station, Mina asked one more question. Will humanity ever come back? If anyone survives this, yes. We left monitoring stations in hidden dimensions. If the expansion stops, if civilization rebuilds, if there's anything left to save, we'll return. The Admiral paused at the door. We made a promise to the galaxy, even if the galaxy didn't want to hear it. Humans keep their promises. They traveled to the refugee processing station where hundreds of alien ships waited in desperate lines. Families that had fled with nothing but their lives crowded into temporary shelters. Children cried for lost homes they would never see again. Yoon Taejin worked frantically to coordinate supply deliveries. His engineering teams, mostly human volunteers who had stayed behind, struggled to process the endless stream of refugees. They had prepared for thousands, not millions. We're running out of everything, he told Mina as they distributed emergency rations. Food, medical supplies, shelter materials. The refugee count keeps growing faster than we can handle. Mina helped alien families find temporary housing in the overcrowded stations. She translated between species, organized supply distributions, and tried to answer questions she didn't have answers for. Where would they go? How long would they be safe? Would they ever go home again? As she worked, she began to understand the full scope of humanity's preparations. Even the few humans who had stayed behind had emergency plans, supply caches, and evacuation procedures. They had been preparing for this disaster for decades, even while their alien friends called them paranoid. And somewhere beyond the galaxy, in dimensions and places unknown, the rest of humanity waited with technologies and resources that could rebuild entire civilizations. They had tried to save everyone. When that failed, they had saved themselves and left resources for any survivors. All the galaxy had to do was survive long enough for them to return. 1 year after humanity's departure, the galaxy was dying. Dr. Park Mina stood on the observation deck of the refugee ship New Hope, watching another evacuation fleet struggle toward the galactic core. Hundreds of ships moved through space like wounded animals, carrying the last survivors from dozens of worlds that the silence had consumed. The ship shuddered as its aging engines strained to maintain course. Like everything else in the galaxy, it was falling apart without human maintenance. The aliens had learned to fix some things, but not everything. Not enough. We're losing the port stabilizer again, announced Captain Ji Sung-hyun from the bridge. He was one of only 30 humans left in this entire sector, working desperately to help evacuate alien refugees. Kim Soo-young, can you patch it again? Engineer Kim Soo-young's voice came through the communication system, tired and stressed. I'll try, but we need real parts, not just temporary fixes. This ship needs a complete overhaul that we can't do with current resources. Mina walked toward the ship's small archive room, where she had been working for months to preserve what remained of galactic civilization. The room was crowded with data storage devices, cultural artifacts, and scientific records from hundreds of species. Much of it was damaged or incomplete. So much knowledge had been lost when the silence consumed the outer worlds. She sat down at her computer and continued her work translating alien historical records into human languages. It seemed pointless sometimes since there were so few humans left to read them, but Admiral Nam Yoonji had asked all remaining humans to preserve as much as possible. When we return, she had said, we'll want to know what we lost, if they returned. Mina opened her latest project, the cultural records of the Zephyrian people. Their entire species had been wiped out when the silence consumed their home sector. These records were all that remained of 50,000 years of civilization. Poetry, music, philosophy, science, art. A whole people reduced to data files on a failing computer. She had been working on Zephyrian funeral songs when her computer chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as Admiral Choi Minho, Deep Space Command. Mina's heart jumped. Admiral Choi had been the head of Human Defense Corps before the evacuation. If he was sending messages, it meant humanity was still out there. Still watching, the message was brief. To all remaining human personnel and allied survivors, humanity lives and continues to prepare. The silence expansion has slowed but not stopped. We estimate 2 more years before it reaches the core worlds. We are developing countermeasures but need more time. Preserve what you can. Protect who you can. We will return when the path is safe. This is not the end. Mina read the message 3 times before forwarding it to every human and friendly alien she could contact. For the first time in months, she felt a spark of hope. Humanity was still working on the problem. They hadn't given up. But 2 more years felt like forever when everything was falling apart so quickly. She left the archive room and walked through the ship's refugee sections. Families from dozens of species crowded into small spaces, sharing resources and trying to maintain hope. Children played games with toys made from scrap metal. Adults worked together to repair equipment and grow food in improvised gardens. In one section, she found a group of young Trilacs listening to an elderly Vertani tell stories about the old days, when the galaxy was full of life and the trade routes were safe. The children's eyes were wide with wonder as they imagined worlds they would never see. "Is it true that humans could fix anything?" asked a small Trilac girl. The old Vertani nodded. Humans were the best engineers in the galaxy. They could look at any machine and understand how it worked. They could build things that lasted for centuries. They shared their knowledge with anyone who asked. "Why did they leave us?" the girl asked. The Vertani was quiet for a moment. "They tried to warn us about the danger. We didn't listen. So they saved themselves and they left instructions for those who stayed behind." Mina thought about those instructions. Hidden in human databases throughout the galaxy were emergency protocols, technical manuals, and survival guides. The remaining humans had been sharing this information with alien survivors, teaching them what they could. But there was so much to learn and so little time. She continued walking and found Kim Soo-young in the engine room, working with a mixed team of alien engineers to keep the ship running. The human woman looked exhausted. She had been working 18-hour days for months, training alien crews to maintain human-built equipment. "How are the repairs going?" Mina asked. "We're buying time, nothing more," Kim Soo-young replied, wiping grease from her hands. "This ship was designed to last 50 years with proper human maintenance. We're keeping it running with spare parts and hope." The Admiral sent a message. "Humanity is still working on countermeasures." Kim Soo-young smiled for the first time in weeks. "Good. That means our job is to survive until they get back." Later that day, Mina joined Captain Ji Sung-hyun on the bridge for the daily situation report. The news was always bad, but they reviewed it anyway. Another refugee fleet had been lost to equipment failures. Pirates had attacked a supply convoy. 3 more systems had gone dark as the Silence continued its slow advance. "How many people do we have left in this sector?" Mina asked. Ji Sung-hyun checked his reports. "Maybe 2 million aliens spread across 50 refugee ships. 30 humans total. We're protecting and supporting as many as we can, but the numbers keep getting worse." They watched the long-range sensors track the Silence's expansion. The wave of destruction had slowed, but it still crept forward, consuming everything in its path. At current speed, it would reach the core worlds in exactly 23 months. "Do you think they can really stop it?" Ji Sung-hyun asked. Mina thought about everything she had learned over the past year. Human foresight, human preparation, human determination to solve impossible problems. If anyone can, it's them. Humans don't give up. That evening, she returned to her archive work. She had started a new project, recording the stories of refugee survivors. Their accounts of lost worlds, forgotten cultures, and destroyed civilizations. When humanity returned, they would need to know exactly what had been lost so they could decide what could be rebuilt. She interviewed a Globex merchant who had escaped when his home world was consumed. He described cities that floated on clouds, art made from crystallized music, and libraries that contained the dreams of his ancestors. All gone now, existing only in his memory and her recordings. "Will the humans really come back?" he asked when the interview was finished. "They promised they would," Mina replied. "Humans keep their promises." As she worked late into the ship's night cycle, Mina thought about that promise. Somewhere beyond the galaxy, humanity was building something, preparing something, planning their return to a galaxy that had rejected their warnings but still needed their help. They had tried to save everyone and been called paranoid. They had prepared for disaster and been called alarmist. They had offered help and been voted down, but they had still left behind resources, knowledge, and people to help the survivors. That was what made humans special, Mina realized. They saved people even when those people didn't want to be saved. They prepared for problems even when everyone said the problems didn't exist. They kept promises even when no one believed they would. The galaxy had learned too late what it meant to lose humanity. Now all they could do was hold on and hope that humans meant what they said about coming back. 5 years had passed since humanity's departure, and Dr. Park Mina had grown old waiting for them to return. She stood in the Garden of Haven colony, a small settlement built on a hidden world deep in the galactic core. Around her, survivors from dozens of species worked together to grow food and maintain their small community. It was nothing like the great cities that had once filled the galaxy, but it was home. The silence had stopped expanding 3 years ago, just as it reached the Middle Rim worlds. No one knew why. It simply halted its advance and remained still, like a vast wound in space that refused to heal. Half the galaxy was gone, but half remained. It was more than anyone had dared to hope for. Captain Han Jiho, now the senior human officer in the colony, approached through the garden paths. She was young when the evacuation began, barely out of the academy. Now she was one of the few people who remembered what the galaxy was like before the silence. "The beacon is ready," she announced. "We can start broadcasting today." Mina nodded and followed her to the communication center they had built at the colony's edge. The beacon was a massive array of transmitters designed to broadcast across multiple dimensions. If humanity was out there, monitoring from whatever safe havens they had found, this signal would reach them. "What should we broadcast?" Han Jiho asked. "The truth," Mina replied. "That we survived. That we're still here. That we kept our promise to preserve what we could." For 5 years, the survivors had worked to rebuild what they could from the ruins of galactic civilization. They had established small colonies on safe worlds. They had rescued alien refugees and helped them start new lives. They had preserved languages, cultures, and knowledge from hundreds of lost species. It wasn't much compared to what the galaxy had been, but it was something. It was hope. Mina activated the beacon and began recording her message. "This is Dr. Park Mina, broadcasting from Haven Colony in the galactic core. 5 years have passed since humanity's departure. The silence has stopped expanding, and approximately 2 billion survivors remain in the inner systems. We have established 47 colonies and preserved cultural records from over 300 species. We are alive. We are waiting. Please come home." The message would repeat every hour, broadcasting across dimensions in the hope that humanity's monitoring stations would detect it. They had no way of knowing if anyone was listening, but they had to try. Life in Haven Colony was simple but good. The survivors had learned to work together in ways the old galaxy never managed. Species that had barely spoken to each other before now shared homes and raised children together. Necessity had created the cooperation that politics never could. Mina walked through the small town center, where aliens from dozens of worlds sold goods in a market that mixed architectural styles from across the galaxy. A Trilak baker worked alongside a Vertani electronics repair shop. Globex children played with Zephyrian toys recreated from cultural archives. It was beautiful in its own way, but Mina couldn't help thinking about what they had lost. Entire civilizations, billions of lives, thousands of worlds, all the art and music and literature that had been consumed by the silence. All the scientific knowledge that had vanished with the research stations. She stopped at the memorial wall they had built in the town center. Thousands of names were carved into the stone, representing lost worlds, extinct species, and dead friends. At the top, in large letters, was a simple message. We remember. We endure. We hope. That evening, as Mina worked in her archive office, she heard excited voices outside. She looked through her window and saw people running toward the communications center. Han Jiho's voice echoed through the colony's speakers. "All residents to the communications center immediately. We have incoming signals." Mina ran through the streets along with everyone else. Her old legs protested, but excitement carried her forward. The communications center was packed with aliens and the few remaining humans, all staring at the sensor displays. The screens showed massive objects approaching from deep space. Ships, but unlike anything they had seen before. They were huge, easily the size of small moons, and they moved through space in ways that defied normal physics. They seemed to slip between dimensions, appearing and disappearing as they traveled. "How many?" Mina asked. "Hundreds," Han Jiho replied, her voice filled with wonder. "Maybe thousands. They're coming from multiple directions, all converging on our position." The largest ship appeared in orbit around their world without any visible transition. One moment space was empty, The next, a massive vessel hung in the sky above them. It was clearly of human design, but incorporating technologies that seemed almost magical. A communication signal came through their beacon array. A familiar voice filled the communication center, speaking in clear, unaccented human language. "This is Admiral Song Minjae of the Human Expeditionary Fleet calling Haven Colony. Dr. Park Mina, Captain Han Jiho and all survivors, we hear you. We're coming home." The communication center erupted in cheers and tears. Aliens embraced each other and the few humans present. After 5 years of uncertainty, humanity had kept its promise. Over the following hours, more ships appeared in orbit. Massive construction vessels, research ships, hospital ships, and colony transports. The fleet was so large it filled the sky with lights. And from each ship, smaller vessels began descending to the planet's surface. The first shuttle to land carried Admiral Song Minjae and a team of human diplomats and scientists. As they stepped onto the landing pad, Mina was struck by how different they looked. They were still human, but there was something changed about them. They moved with quiet confidence, and their eyes held knowledge of technologies and places beyond normal understanding. Admiral Song approached Mina with a gentle smile. "Dr. Park, thank you for keeping the beacon lit. We've been watching and waiting for the right moment to return." "You're really here," Mina whispered, hardly believing it. "We promised we would return. Humans keep their promises." The Admiral looked around at the mixed crowd of aliens and humans who had gathered to greet them. "You've done well. You preserved not just yourselves, but the heart of what made our galaxy great." Over the following days, the returning humans shared their story. They had found safe haven in dimensions beyond normal space, places where the silence could not reach. They had spent 5 years building technologies that could counter the dimensional collapse, developing ways to restore the areas that had been consumed. "We couldn't act while the silence was still expanding," Admiral Song explained to the colony's leaders. "Any intervention would have drawn its attention to the core worlds. We had to wait until it stabilized before we could begin reconstruction." The humans had brought with them something miraculous: genetic samples and cultural archives from every species that had been lost. They had been collecting this information for decades before the evacuation, preparing to preserve galactic civilization even if they couldn't save everyone who lived in it. "We can bring them back," the Admiral announced. "Not the individuals who died, but their species, their cultures, their worlds. It will take generations, but we can rebuild what was lost." Construction ships began working immediately to establish new colonies and research stations. Hospital ships treated the survivors and began the process of restoring extinct species from preserved genetic material. The humans worked alongside the aliens they had left behind, planning a reconstruction effort that would span centuries. Mina stood in her garden one evening, watching human ships move across the sky like new stars. The galaxy felt alive again for the first time in 5 years. Not the same as it had been before, but something new and better. Captain Han Jiho joined her in the garden. "Did you ever doubt they would come back?" "No," Mina replied honestly. "Humans don't abandon their friends. They just sometimes have to leave to save them." Above them, construction began on the first of the new worlds. The humans had returned not as conquerors or saviors, but as gardeners ready to help plant seeds in the ashes of the old galaxy. They had learned hard lessons about preparation and cooperation during their exile, and they were determined to build something better than what had been lost. The age of rebuilding had begun, and this time, everyone would listen when humans talked about preparing for the impossible.